Turn heads and bring the hype with a custom hype chain from Lotwin. Perfect for youth sports, fantasy football, or just flexing your pride. Go to Lotwin.com, use the promo code TCCPOD for 10% off your order. That's Lotwin.com, promo code TCCPOD for 10% off. Get your custom hype chain and get hype with Lotwin. What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Phillies sports history for September 5th, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a feel-good Friday, a Victory Friday edition of the podcast. Let's get right into the Eagles game yesterday. Lots to talk about with this game, and Eagles win 24-20, of course, long weather delay. But I will say the Cowboys-Eagles rivalry seems to be back because the fireworks started literally right from the gate. Jalen Carter was ejected for spitting on Dak Prescott, which kind of we didn't know until people started texting us what was happening. Not a good, cool move at all. It's one of those things, like, I don't know. I don't like spitting on somebody. I think that's the most disrespectful thing you can do. But it wasn't until after the game, as I was driving home, we got off the subway, I was coming back from my buddy Hoppy's house, and I was getting text all of a sudden that Dak spit in the direction of Jalen Carter. First, didn't actually spit on him, and it made more sense. And he's a slime ball, absolute slime ball, but kudos and credit to Dak for knowing exactly what to do and getting Jalen Carter out, because it certainly impacted the rest of the game. Excuse me. Cowboys come right down and score, and you could tell early on, specifically in the first half, that the Eagles certainly missed Jalen Carter being there on the front line. But they got it together, held on to win. Jalen Hurts was great. Didn't have his best day throwing the ball, but neither did Dak. So in a rivalry game, first game of the season, they relied heavily on the running game, and he got it done. To Jalen's credit, didn't force anything. It would have been very easy to try to get the ball to Devontae and AJ. I have not looked at the replay of the game. I'll watch that later today to see if there were opportunities. It did seem early in the game that they were kind of trying to set it up, and I don't know if the Cowboys adjusted or not, but both AJ and Devontae, it's why I love my seats, they had play action set up with pump fakes if the Eagles wanted to take it. But again, the Cowboys, to their credit, they had a good game plan, and they executed it and took AJ and Devontae out of the game. But Jalen, 2 rushing touchdowns, excuse me, including a tush push, which is always nice. Defense, to their credit, stepped up when they had to. Zach Bond played very, very well. I thought Jihad Campbell played well. Quinyon Mitchell had the fumble recovery, and then I thought for sure he would be on CeeDee Lamb, but he was not. He was with George Pickens, and for the most part, kept him in check, minus the pass interference early in the game, which that was just a bad pass interference. I guess it happens. But Adoree Jackson had a rough go at it guarding CeeDee Lamb, so I don't know what that means for cornerback 2 moving forward. It's been my concern coming into the game. It's still, I think, an issue. But overall, I think a good solid win to start the season. Wasn't pretty, just like how last year down in Brazil was not pretty. But, I mean, I'll take it. I mean, I think anytime, not to sound like Andy Reid, but anytime you can get a win against your rival in the National Football League to open the season, essentially this was the preseason first game for the starters. I'll take it. You got a couple extra days here now to prepare for Kansas City. But a win is a win at this point, and it could have been, like I said, it could have been a lot prettier. but they all count the same. But credit to the defense. I think the defense stepped up in the second half, specifically after the weather delay, and were able to shut down the Cowboys when it seemed as though they had a shot. So I'll take it. I'll have more on the game on Monday once I have a chance to watch it. And then, of course, next week, don't forget, Kyle and I will break down this game and get you ready for the Chiefs game on the Brotherly Birds Breakdown, available wherever you get your podcasts as well as on YouTube. A couple news and notes and nuggets. We were able to get to like 3 different tailgates yesterday in our effort and our quest to find a new tailgate. I don't know if any of them overwhelmed us the way our other one. I mean, the way we had it at Danny Burke's tailgate was the bar is set high, but definitely some possibilities. Feel free to send me tailgate information. We have a couple more to check out the Rams game, and I don't know. We're open. We're free agents looking for a new tailgate. The Eagles' all-time record, by the way, for the first time since 1933, they have the same amount of wins as they do losses in the regular season. They're 639, 639, and 27. So some people call that 500, but if you do the percentages and do the math, they're not. So I thought that was pretty cool. First time since 1933, the Eagles have the same amount of wins as they do losses. And then that leads us now to, like we always do, day after the game, who is your GOAT of the game? I got it narrowed down to Jalen, Quinyon Mitchell, Zach Bond, or Saquon Barkley. I think the answer here is pretty obvious, but hit me up on the Back to the Future voice and text line 267-495-8531. Get that. Anything else Philly sports related off your chest. It still remains to be seen if Jalen Carter is going to be suspended, but I do think, I feel like this is an episode of Seinfeld with the Keith Hernandez, but I think the fact that Dak sort of spit in the direction probably will fine Jalen Carter. I can't see him getting suspended for that. If he does, that's going to be a huge, huge loss. But let me know your thoughts. Who is your GOAT of the game? Jalen Hurts, Quinyon Mitchell, Zach Bond, or Saquon Barkley? And that does lead to today's trivia question. Jalen had 2 rushing touchdowns. He's slowly climbing up that list. But who is the Eagles' all-time leading rusher for touchdowns, rushing touchdowns? Whether it's a quarterback, whether it's a running back, who has the most rushing touchdowns in Eagles history? Hit me up on the Discord, first link in the description. Back to the Future voice and text line, or any of my social medias. Jimbo_Mont on Twitter and TikTok. On Instagram at Philly Jimbo. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Keeps you in the loop for both this podcast and the Brotherly Birds Breakdown. But hit me up. Let me know who has the most rushing touchdowns in Eagles history, as well as your GOAT of the game. And then shout out to FanDuel for having SEPTA running. It was pretty much the same as it always is getting out of the stadium. I take it that part of their payment or donation, whatever you want to call it, did not include air conditioning, because that train was hot on the way down and it was also hot on the way back. I get that there was a ton of people crowded in there, but I felt like it was a little extra toasty. But thank you, FanDuel, for not leaving me stranded in South Philly last night. All right, yesterday's trivia question. Who led the 1988 Eagles in interceptions? Everybody wanted to say Eric Allen, but it was in fact Terry Hogue led the Eagles with 8 interceptions that year. Yes, Terry Hogue, 8 interceptions for the 88 Eagles. All right, you may have missed this. I know I did. We were checking the scores, but the Phillies with a huge win, 2-0 out in Milwaukee, taking 2 of 3 from the Brewers. It was the Harrison Bader show. Scored the insurance run, saved the run in the bottom of the ninth. Johan Duran got the save. Ranger was outstanding. 6 scoreless innings. And listen, that that was a huge win. Got the lead in the division back up to 6 games. And I do apologize for my voice. Lots of screaming, lots of defense chants. So I'm not 100% my normal self today, but good win for the Phils. They open up a 3-game series this weekend in Miami, and then next week a huge 4-game series against the Mets where they could officially end this division. But first, let's take care of business against the Marlins. You got Christopher Sanchez tonight, Luzardo tomorrow, and Taijuan Walker on Sunday. But great win, solid win, good bounce back after getting down early the other night with Aaron Nola. But Phils take 2 out of 3 from the Brewers. That's a huge deal when it comes to standings, playoff seeding, all that good stuff, tiebreakers. So good series for the Phils. Hopefully they can take care of business against the Marlins and not slip up. I mentioned the housekeeping on my social media. Like I said, be sure to tune in next week as we break down the Cowboys games, keep you up to date on any news with the Eagles, as well as get you ready for the Chiefs on the Brotherly Birds breakdown, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. This day in Philly sports history is proud to be a part of the Clashing Conferences Sports Fan Network, a growing community of diehard fans turning their sports passion into something special. Whether you're looking for unique shows, want to launch your own podcast but don't have the time, or need production services, theclashingconferences.com has everything you need. Explore fan-driven content, become a member, or tap into their media services to level up your brand. That's clashingconferences.com, where fans' voices get heard. All right, September 4th. Today is September 5th. September 5th, we're going to go back to 1976 first, and the Phillies beat the Mets 3-1. And it was the Larry Christensen show. He pitched 8 1/3 innings, gave up 1 run, but did the damage at the plate. Went 2 for 3 with 2 solo home runs. Single-handedly beat the Mets. Ron Reed got the save. That 76 Phillies team would go on to win 101 games before getting swept out of the playoffs by the Big Red Machine. But on this day in 1976, it was the Larry Christensen show, as he went 2 for 3 at the plate, 2 solo homers, and 8 1/3 of 1-run ball. Fast forward to 1993. Eagles beat the Cardinals 23-17 at the Vet. It was a sloppy game full of turnovers. Eagles turned the ball over 3 times. Cardinals turned it over 2 times. Randall Cunningham had a rushing touchdown. The Eagles rushed for 167 yards and 3 touchdowns on the day. Vaughn Hepburn and Heath Sherman also scored. That 93 team was a weird team, though. They started off 4-0. Randall got hurt in that game against the Jets, where Eric Allen returned the interception to seal the game for the touchdown, gave the ball to Randall, who was on crutches. Because after this game, they lost 6 straight en route to an 8-8 season, setting up for that epic collapse in the 94 season. But on this day, Eagles started off 1-0 with a sloppy win against a division rival. Stop me if you heard this, where the rushing game was the star. They would go 4-0 before losing 6 straight to fall out of contention. And then finally, 2015, one of my greatest moments as a Temple football fan occurred on this day. We finally slayed the Dragon back in 2015 down at Lincoln Financial Field. Yeah, Temple beat Penn State 27-10 as the defense ran wild on Christian Hackenberg, sacked him 10 times, setting an American Conference record. Tyler Manikevich had 3 of them. Hassan Reddick had 1.5, and Jihad Thomas ran for 135 yards and 2 touchdowns. That Temple team started 7-0 before the big Halloween matchup against Notre Dame, where College Game Day came down to Independence Hall. They got all the way up to number 21 in the rankings. But on this day, they finally beat Penn State. One of my greatest moments as a staunch Penn State hater. This was a good day to be at Temple Out.
It's time for Fridays with AI, where we ask AI to rewrite Philly sports history. Every Friday, only on This Day in Philly Sports History.
That's right. It is Friday. It's time for Fridays with AI, brought to you by Philly Goat. Go to phillygoat.com. Get geared up for the Eagles, the Phillies postseason run. Sixers and Flyers are around the corner. Unions are about to go on a playoff run. Philly Goat has you covered. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off of your order. All right, so figured why not stick with Temple football? Owls won the other day, 42-10 against UMass. Another team I don't really like too much at all. But I said, AI, what would have happened if Temple somehow held on to win that game in Notre Dame? And AI did not disappoint. In reality, the Temple Owls lost that game 24-20 when Deshaun Kaiser hit Will Fuller with a fourth quarter touchdown late. But what if the Owls stopped them on that defense or on that offensive drive? Well, AI said, all right, let's say they break up the pass and somehow get the ball back, whether it's a punt, turnover on downs, whatever, however they got the ball back. But AI said the way Temple was moving the ball there in the fourth quarter when they were coming back, they would get into field goal range, kick a field goal, and then stop Notre Dame on that final drive, because at that point, Notre Dame would have had to come down and score a touchdown. Owls would win it 23-17. But what does that mean for the season? Because in reality, the Owls kind of crumbled as they could never really recover from that loss, the emotional letdown. Well, they'd be 8-0. They would move up because Notre Dame was ranked in the top 10. Temple would be ranked number 10 in the AP poll, highest ranking in school history, and they would be the talk of the college football world, the Cinderella story, kind of similar to Boise State. They called it, or AI called it specifically Boise State-esque. Certainly would have been in the college football playoff discussion. Them and Houston were heading into that Notre Dame game anyway. AI says they still dropped the game like they did in real life against South Florida on the road, but due to the confidence of beating Notre Dame, beating Penn State, just playing lights out on defense, their confidence would be higher, and it sets up an epic American Conference championship against Houston with a New Year's Six bowl on the line, which essentially it kind of was anyway, but the Owls had 2 losses, so they were looking to spoil Houston in real life. But feeling good with the way the team had been playing, the Owls actually come out and win a thriller against the Houston Cougars to win the American Conference Championship, earning themselves a New Year's Six bowl, going to the Peach Bowl to take on Ole Miss. They ended up ranked number 7 in the final regular season AP poll. And then in the Peach Bowl, Ole Miss jumps out early, 17-0, but the defense adjusts at the half and shuts down Ole Miss as the offense comes alive. P.J. Walker and Jahad Thomas lead the way. Robbie Anderson gets into the act with a touchdown as the Owls upset Ole Miss 27-24, finish the season 13-1 and number 6 in the final rankings. But more importantly, this helps with recruiting. A lot of those players that would be going to Penn State, be going to Rutgers, decide, you know what, I'm going to stay in the city and go to Temple. And Matt Rule ends up staying an extra year because essentially he doesn't have to settle for the Baylor job because he's brought recognition to Temple, got them into the national conversation. So he eventually does leave, but he holds out for another year or two because he's not like going to the situation that he had to go to in Baylor. Temple, due to their success in the New Year's Six Bowl, the Peach Bowl, they were in the conversation for Big 12 expansion. Maybe they get in, maybe they don't. But if they get into the Big 12, of course, that changes the whole outlook on Temple football. So had they won that game against Notre Dame, it would have had huge implications. I mean, in reality, losing that game still had pretty huge implications for the Owl. But AI says if Temple would have beaten Notre Dame, they likely would have ran the table and gotten into the Peach Bowl. But what are your thoughts? Could that have happened if they beat Notre Dame? I mean, back then, if you'd have told me Temple would have hung tough like they did against Notre Dame, I would have said you were crazy. So who knows? But that is Fridays with AI, brought to you as always by Philly Goat. Go to phillygoat.com. Use that promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off of your order. And then finally today, our underrated, underappreciated Philly athlete. We're going to stick with college. And today's spotlight is on Lionel Simmons, the L Train, the South Philly High graduate, 86 Public League Championship, 86 Public League MVP, went to LaSalle, was the National College Player of the Year in 1990, first team All-American, was second team All-American in 1989, three-time Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference Player of the Year. His number 22 is retired at LaSalle. Got drafted by the Sacramento Kings. Made all rookie. Finished second in the Rookie of the Year voting behind Derek Coleman. Had a solid 7-year career, averaging almost 13 points a game and 6 rebounds. But unfortunately, injuries caught up and cut his career short in the NBA. But still a solid NBA player, a great college player at LaSalle, a great high school player at South Philly High, back when the public league was head and shoulders above the suburban schools. He is the Big Five's all-time leading scorer, number 5 all-time in NCAA history. But Lionel Simmons, the L Train, is our underrated, underappreciated Philly athlete of all time. A lot of people don't talk about him when we talk about the great athletes. You could certainly make the argument. I know there's a lot of old school people who say Wilt, but you could make the argument that Lionel Simmons is the greatest player to come out of the public league. Certainly, probably the best player to come out of the Big Five. You could make that argument too. But what are your thoughts on Lionel Simmons, the L Train, as today's underrated, underappreciated athlete? Be sure to like, subscribe, leave a review, comment, all that other good stuff. I do apologize for my voice. I feel like I am struggling today. So hopefully this comes out clear and everything. But I appreciate you. But let me know your thoughts on Lionel Simmons as where do you think he stands in the pantheon of Philly athletes? A lot of times we don't look at the college players the way we do our pro players, but L Train, certainly his career at LaSalle alone puts him up there as one of the all-time greats in Philly sports. All right, we spent Fridays with AI and found out what would have happened if Temple held on to beat Notre Dame in that game, going to the Peach Bowl and beating Ole Miss. But we spend Fridays with AI every Friday, so stay tuned this and every other Friday as we ask AI to rewrite Philly sports history. On this day in 2015, hell froze over. Temple beat Penn State 27-10 in dominating fashion down at the Link. 1993, Eagles opened the season with a sloppy 23-17 win over the Cardinals. And in 1976, it was the Larry Christensen show as he hit 2 home runs, pitched 8 1/3 of innings of 1-run ball as the Phillies beat the Mets 3-1 en route to a 101-win season. I'll have more day after breakdown of the Eagles game, but again, solid win. I'll take it. It wasn't super pretty, but the Eagles took care of the ball. I do think if Jalen Carter did not get ejected, changes the way that the Cowboys offense operated. So again, he's a scumbag, but kudos to Dak Prescott for egging on Jalen Carter. And the fact of the matter is, look, I said this as one of the keys to the game, and Jalen certainly did not do that. You had to keep your emotions in check, and you got to be better there, Jalen. Whether or not he spit at you first, you can't go doing that. And I hopefully it's a learning experience. Hopefully Jalen can figure out that, you know what, I got to keep my emotions in check. He's a very emotional player, and I think that's what makes him so great. But Jalen, man, you can't do that. You got to keep it under control. But again, kudos to scumbag Dak Prescott for egging him on with that. But Jalen Carter has to be better. And I mean, I saw Dak's post-game show, and he had that dumb smirk on his face. Definitely has entered the conversation of punchable faces, that Dak Prescott. But we'll have more on the Eagles game. We'll have more on what happens around the NFL, as well as the Phillies series with the Marlins. The Union have a game this weekend, and all of that will be, on Monday's episode when we rewind the weekend. But enjoy your Victory Friday, your Feel Good Friday. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for September 5th, 2025. My name's Jim Montgomery, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.